The drums fell silent across Obadime kingdom as dawn approached. In the great red clay palace, servants discovered Prince Olufemi's chambers empty, his coronation robes untouched, his ceremonial sword abandoned on the bed. The heir to the ancient throne had vanished like morning mist. King Adetokonbo stood in his son's room, his weathered hands trembling as he touched the golden crown that would never grace Olufemi's head. The sacred oils prepared for the coronation ceremony grew cold in their calabashes, while the kingdom's most powerful chiefs waited in confusion outside the palace gates. "My lord," whispered Morankeji, the king's most trusted advisor, the people gather in the courtyard. They expect to see their new king presented before the ancestor shrine. But Adetokonbo's eyes were fixed on something else, muddy footprints leading from his son's window toward the forbidden western border. His heart knew what his mind refused to accept. Olufemi had crossed the River Nkumbe into the cursed lands where no royal blood had walked for 3 centuries. The morning wind carried the scent of burning palm oil from village cooking fires, but today it smelled like morning. Today, the kingdom of Obadime would learn that their future king had chosen exile over the crown, leaving behind a mystery that would shake the very foundations of their ancient traditions. The River Nkumbe flowed like liquid darkness between the kingdom of Obadime and the forbidden lands beyond. Its waters were said to carry the voices of ancient spirits who warned travelers away from the cursed territory that lay beyond its muddy banks. Prince Olufemi stood on the far shore, his royal robes torn by thorns, his feet bleeding from sharp stones. Behind him, the river gurgled with disapproval, as if the spirits themselves questioned his choice to abandon everything he had been born to inherit. The land before him stretched endlessly. Rolling hills covered in strange silver grass that whispered secrets in languages he had never heard. Twisted baobab trees dotted the landscape like ancient guardians, their massive trunks scarred by centuries of isolation from the world of men. He had crossed at midnight, when the moon was dark and the river spirits were said to sleep. But even now, as the sun climbed higher, he could feel their anger following him like invisible smoke. His stomach clenched with hunger, but he pressed forward. There could be no return now, not after what he had learned in the prophecy chamber. The terrible truth that had driven him from his father's palace burned in his memory like hot coals. Behind him, across the forbidden waters, the drums of Obadime began their frantic rhythm, calling the scattered chiefs, alerting the kingdom that their prince had committed the unthinkable act of abandoning his sacred duty. King Adetokonbo sat on the ancient throne of red earth and gold, his crown feeling heavier than it had in 30 years of rule. Before him knelt the kingdom's greatest tracker, Ikondeo, whose skills had never failed to find what was lost. "My king," Ikondeo said, his voice heavy with defeat, "the prince's trail ends at the River Nkumbe. The spirits guard the far shore, and my power cannot reach beyond the cursed waters." The great hall fell silent except for the crackling of palm oil lamps. Chiefs Nyasha and Chidubem exchanged worried glances, both knowing that a kingdom without an heir was like a tree without roots, destined to fall when storms came. Queen Mother Adoni entered the hall, her eyes red from weeping. She had not spoken since discovering her son's disappearance, but now she approached the throne with the dignity of a woman who had borne kings. "My husband," she said, her voice carrying the weight of generations, "perhaps our son saw something we did not. Perhaps his leaving was not cowardice, but courage we are too blind to understand." King Adetokonbo raised his head, studying his wife's face. "What do you mean?" 3 nights ago, I found Olufemi in the prophecy chamber, reading the oldest scrolls by lamplight. When I asked what troubled him, he said only that some truths were too heavy for a single heart to bear. The king's blood grew cold. The prophecy chamber held secrets that were forbidden to all but the reigning monarch. What ancient knowledge had his son discovered there? In the prophecy chamber beneath the palace, King Adetokonbo broke the ancient seals that had protected the deeper secrets of Obadime for generations. The scrolls were written on bark cloth in the old language, their words preserved in sacred ink made from blood and palm wine. His hands shook as he unrolled the scroll his son must have read. The prophecy was older than memory, written by the first king's own hand. When the seventh generation wears the crown, a choice shall come between power and sacrifice. The royal blood shall cross the cursed river, or the kingdom shall burn in flames that consume even the ancestors' bones. Adetokonbo was the sixth king. Olufemi would have been the seventh. The prophecy continued, the prince who chooses exile saves his people, though his heart shall break like clay in fire. He who stays to rule shall watch his kingdom crumble to dust, and his name shall be cursed by children not yet born. The king's hands released the scroll, and it rolled closed with a sound like distant thunder. Now he understood. Olufemi had not abandoned his duty, he had fulfilled it in the most painful way imaginable. But the prophecy spoke of more than exile. It warned of a price that would test the very foundations of a father's love, a cost so terrible that even knowing the truth might not be enough to bear it. Outside, the wind howled through the baobab trees, carrying the scent of distant smoke. Somewhere beyond the cursed river, his son walked alone through lands no royal foot had touched for centuries, carrying the weight of his people's survival on his shoulders. Prince Olufemi walked through the silver grass that rustled with voices of the long dead. Each step took him further from everything he had ever known, deeper into the cursed lands where ancient magic still pulsed beneath the earth like a sleeping heartbeat. The sun blazed overhead, but the silver grass remained cool to the touch, as if the land itself remembered times before heat and light. Strange birds flew overhead, creatures with metallic feathers that caught the sunlight and threw it back in colors that had no names. His royal training had prepared him for many things, but not for this. Not for the loneliness that pressed against his chest like a physical weight, not for the way the wind carried sounds that might have been crying or might have been laughter from invisible lips. He found a stream of clear water running between banks of black stone. As he knelt to drink, his reflection showed a face already changed by his choice. The soft features of palace life were hardening into the sharp angles of a man who had chosen the harder path. Why? He whispered to his reflection, though he already knew the answer. Because a true king protects his people, even from himself. Because some crowns are too heavy for any one man to wear. Because love sometimes demands the sacrifice of everything we hold dear. The water tasted of minerals and old magic, and when he stood, his reflection seemed to linger for a moment longer than it should have, as if the cursed land was already claiming pieces of his soul. Back in Obadime, Queen Mother Adoni sought answers from Babalawo Ifagbemi, the oldest and wisest oracle in the kingdom. The ancient man sat cross-legged in his sacred grove, surrounded by cowrie shells and burning herbs that filled the air with mysterious smoke. "Speak plainly, old father," the queen said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "What prophecy drove my son into exile?" Ifagbemi's blind eyes seemed to look through her, into realms where past and future danced together like flames. The same prophecy that saved this kingdom 300 years ago, when King Olumide's brother chose the cursed path to spare our people from plague and war. Then this has happened before. Every 7 generations, the choice comes. Royal blood must cross the River Nkumbe, or the kingdom falls. But the cost? The old man's voice trailed off, and his hands trembled as they touched the divining shells. "Tell me the cost," Adoni demanded. "The prince who crosses the river saves his people, but he can never return. The cursed land will change him, reshape him, until he becomes something more and less than human. He will live forever, watching over the kingdom from the far shore, but he will never again know the touch of human love or the comfort of home." The queen's heart broke like an egg dropped on stone. Her son had not simply chosen exile, he had chosen to sacrifice his very humanity to protect the kingdom he loved. But Ifagbemi was not finished. And there is more. The transformation requires a final sacrifice, one that will test the depth of his love for his people. Deep in the cursed lands, Prince Olufemi reached the heart of the silver grass plains where an enormous baobab tree stood alone, its branches reaching toward the sky like desperate fingers. Carved into its trunk were symbols older than the kingdom of Obadime, older than human memory. As he approached, the tree began to glow with soft blue light, and a voice spoke from within its ancient wood, not heard, but felt directly in his bones. "Prince of Obadime, you have come to claim the guardian's burden. Do you understand the price? Olufemi knelt before the tree, his royal training making him show respect even to forces beyond his understanding. I understand that my people will die if I do not pay it. Your people will live, the voice agreed, but you will become something else. Neither fully human nor fully spirit, bound to these lands forever, watching over your kingdom but never able to return to it. Is your love for them greater than your love for yourself? Without hesitation, he answered, it is. The tree's light grew brighter, and he felt something fundamental changing in his chest, around his heart. His royal blood was transforming, becoming something that could bridge the gap between the human world and the realm of spirits. Then receive the guardian's sight, the voice continued, and see what threatens your people. Suddenly, Olufemi's vision expanded beyond the physical world. He saw armies massing beyond the eastern mountains, plague ships sailing toward the kingdom's ports, drought spirits gathering to destroy the harvest. All of these disasters would have struck Obadime within the year if not for the guardian's protection. Now he truly understood. This was not punishment, it was the greatest honor a prince could receive. In Obadime, panic spread like wildfire through the villages. Without a crowned king, the kingdom's spiritual protection was weakening. Crops began to wither in the fields, and strange illnesses appeared among the livestock. Chief Nyasha called an emergency council of the elders. We must name a new heir, he declared, his voice echoing through the great hall. The kingdom cannot survive without royal blood on the throne. But King Adetokonbo, now understanding the truth of the prophecy, shook his head. My son has not abandoned us. He has gone where we cannot follow to protect us in ways we cannot imagine. Pretty words will not fill empty granaries, Chief Chidubem argued. The people grow afraid. They say the ancestors have abandoned us because our prince ran away like a coward. Queen Mother Adoni rose from her seat, her eyes flashing with fire. My son is no coward. He has sacrificed more than any of you could comprehend to keep this kingdom safe. Then where is he? Nyasha demanded. Why does he not return to claim his crown? The king closed his eyes, feeling the weight of knowledge he could not fully share. Because some sacrifices require everything, including the right to return home. But his protection surrounds us even now, though we cannot see it. Outside the palace walls, the people of Obadime gathered in the marketplaces and village squares, their voices raised in worry and confusion. Some called for Prince Olufemi's return, others whispered that he had been bewitched by evil spirits. But in the prophecy chamber, ancient scrolls spoke of a different truth, one that would soon reveal itself in ways no one expected. Beyond the River Nkumbe, Prince Olufemi felt his humanity slowly slipping away like water through his fingers. His reflection in forest pools showed changes that would have terrified a lesser man. His eyes now held flecks of silver that moved like living things, and his skin had taken on the subtle glow of moonlight on water. The baobab tree had become his companion, its ancient voice teaching him the secrets of the guardian's power. He learned to see through the eyes of birds, to feel the movement of armies through vibrations in the earth, to sense the approach of plague and disaster long before they reached his kingdom's borders. The eastern armies massed for attack, he reported to the tree during his daily communion. Shall I turn the rivers against them? Not yet, the tree replied. First, you must complete the transformation. Your human heart still clings to old attachments. You must release them or your power will be incomplete. Olufemi understood. He had crossed the river and accepted the guardian's burden, but part of him still hoped to return home someday, still dreamed of seeing his parents' faces again. That hope was a weakness that could endanger his people. How do I let go of everything I love? By loving something greater, the tree answered. Your kingdom's future, your people's children not yet born, the continuation of all that makes life precious. Personal love is a small flame. Divine love is the sun itself. That night, as silver grass whispered around him, Olufemi began the hardest lesson of all, learning to love so completely that his own desires became meaningless in comparison. King Adetokonbo stood on the palace walls, watching smoke rise from the eastern border. Scouts had confirmed what he had feared: a massive army approached, larger than any force Obadime had ever faced. Without a crowned king to lead them, his people's chances of survival seemed impossible. But as he watched, something extraordinary happened. The enemy army suddenly stopped their advance, their war cries turning to screams of confusion and fear. Through his viewing glass, the king saw their horses rearing in terror, their weapons falling from nerveless hands. Between the army and the kingdom, silver mist rose from the ground like breath on cold air. Within that mist, shapes moved. Tall figures that might have been human or might have been something else entirely, their forms flowing like water while their eyes blazed with protective fire. The enemy army broke and fled, abandoning their siege equipment and supply wagons in their desperate rush to escape the mysterious guardians that had appeared from nowhere. "What sorcery is this?" Chief Nyasha whispered, standing beside his king on the wall. Adetokonbo smiled, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Not sorcery. Love. My son's love, protecting us from the far shore." Across the kingdom, the people emerged from their homes to see the silver mist dissipating, carrying with it the thread that had hung over them like a dark cloud. They did not understand what had saved them, but they felt something they had not felt since Prince Olufemi's disappearance: hope. In the prophecy chamber, ancient scrolls glowed briefly with inner light, their words rearranging themselves to record this new chapter in the Guardian's eternal duty. In the cursed lands, Prince Olufemi collapsed to his knees as the power flowed out of him, leaving him drained but victorious. He had saved his people from the Eastern Army, but the effort had cost him something precious, another piece of his humanity. His hands, once soft from palace life, now bore the calluses of eternal service. His heart, once full of personal dreams and desires, now beat with the rhythm of the kingdom itself. He was becoming what the ancient prophecy had always intended: not a king who ruled from a throne, but a guardian who protected from the shadows. The baobab tree's voice reached him through his exhaustion: "You saved them from war, but greater threats approach. Plague ships sail from the western seas, and drought spirits gather in the northern deserts. Each protection will cost you more of what you once were." Olufemi raised his head, looking toward the River Nkumbe that separated him from everything he loved. "I understand. And I accept. Even if it means you can never return. Even if your own people forget your name and remember you only as a legend." "Especially then," he replied, his voice steady despite the pain in his chest. "True love asks nothing in return, not even memory." That night, as he meditated beneath the ancient tree, Olufemi felt his connection to the kingdom deepening. He could sense every village, every family, every child sleeping safely because of his sacrifice. The weight of that responsibility was crushing, but it was also the source of his greatest strength. He was no longer Prince Olufemi. He was becoming something more: a bridge between worlds, a shield against the darkness, a love so pure it had transcended the boundaries of flesh and blood. Queen Mother Adoni woke from troubled dreams to find her chamber filled with the scent of distant rain and silver grass, scents that had no place in her palace rooms. By the window stood a figure she almost recognized, translucent as morning mist but unmistakably familiar in its stance and bearing. "My son," she whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might shatter the vision. The figure turned, and she saw Olufemi's face transformed by divine purpose. His eyes held starlight, and his skin glowed with the soft radiance of moonbeams on water. "Mother," he said, his voice echoing as if it came from a great distance, "I come to warn you. Plague ships approach from the western ports. You must prepare the healers and gather medicinal herbs from the sacred groves. The sickness will be terrible, but it can be fought. Come home," she pleaded, reaching toward him with desperate hands. "Let someone else bear this burden. You have sacrificed enough." His form began to fade as dawn light touched the window. "There is no one else, Mother." This is the price of royal blood, to serve even when service demands everything. But know that I am not lost. I am exactly where I need to be. As he vanished like smoke in the morning breeze, his final words lingered in the air, "Tell father that his son has found his crown at last." Not gold and jewels, but responsibility that will never end. Adoni ran from her chamber, calling for the healers and herbalists. Her son's warning would save thousands of lives, but the cost of his protection grew heavier with each passing day. In the cursed lands, Olufemi knelt before the baobab tree, his form already less solid than it had been the day before. Babalawo Ifagbemi prepared the kingdom's defenses against the approaching plague with knowledge that seemed to come from the spirits themselves. His blind eyes saw truths that escaped younger, clearer vision, and his hands moved with certainty born of divine guidance. "Gather the bitter leaf and neem bark," he instructed his apprentices. "Burn." 3 days later, their crews already dying from the disease they carried. But Obadime was ready. The herbs Ifagbemi had prepared proved effective against the sickness, and the protective rituals he had prescribed kept the worst of the plague at bay. Still, some people fell ill despite their precautions. In the palace infirmary, Queen Mother Adoni tended to the sick with her own hands, drawing strength from the knowledge that her son watched over them all from his exile. "Why do some suffer while others stay healthy?" asked young Princess Folake, the king's niece, as she helped distribute healing potions. "Because protection is not the same as perfection," Adoni replied gently. "Your cousin shields us from the worst disasters, but he cannot remove all suffering from the world. That would make us weak, unable to grow and learn from our struggles." As the days passed, it became clear that Obadime would survive the plague far better than neighboring kingdoms. Refugees began arriving at the borders, seeking the healing knowledge and protective magic that seemed to surround the land. Word spread that King Aditokombo possessed wisdom beyond mortal understanding. Though those closest to him knew the truth, their protection came from a prince who had traded his crown for a guardian's eternal watch. The northern desert sent their worst weapon against Obadime, a drought so severe it could turn fertile fields into dust and rivers into memories. But in the cursed lands, Prince Olufemi felt the approaching disaster like physical pain and prepared to meet it with powers he was still learning to control. His connection to the land had deepened until he could feel every plant's thirst, every animal's distress. The baobab tree had taught him to speak with the clouds, to call rain from distant seas, to negotiate with the spirits that control the flow of underground streams. "The price grows steeper," the tree warned him. "To break this drought, you must give up your last physical anchor to the human world. Are you prepared?" Olufemi looked toward the River Nkumbe, knowing what the tree meant. As long as he retained even a shadow of his original form, he remained partially bound to mortal concerns. To save his kingdom from the killing drought, he would have to complete his transformation into pure spirit. "Will I still be able to think? To remember why I chose this path?" "You will remember love," the tree replied. "But the memories of being loved in return will fade. You will know your purpose but forget the pain of separation. Is that not mercy?" That night, under a sky that held no clouds, Olufemi made his choice. He surrendered his remaining humanity to the drought-breaking ritual, feeling his physical form dissolve into mist and energy while his consciousness expanded to encompass the entire kingdom. Rain began to fall before dawn, gentle at first, then building to the steady downpour that would save the crops and refill the wells. But the prince who had called it would never again walk in that rain or feel its touch on human skin. King Aditokombo sat alone in the prophecy chamber, reading the ancient scrolls that had predicted his son's sacrifice. With each passing season, he understood more about the choice Olufemi had made and the price he continued to pay. The scrolls spoke of other guardian princes from generations past, royal heirs who had crossed the River Nkumbe to become eternal protectors of their people. Some had lasted centuries before their spiritual energy was finally exhausted. Others had burned themselves out in single acts of desperate protection. "How long can he maintain this burden?" the king asked the empty air, though he feared he already knew the answer. The ancient text was clear. The guardian's power comes from love, but love without return grows thinner with each passing year. When the prince no longer remembers why he protects, when duty becomes habit and habit becomes emptiness, then his watch will end, and another must take his place. Adito Kombo's hands shook as he read the final prophecy. In the twilight of the guardian's strength, the kingdom must choose, release their protector from his burden and face the world without magical defense, or allow him to fade into legend while they find new ways to stand strong. Outside the chamber, servants went about their daily duties in a kingdom that prospered under invisible protection. The people had grown accustomed to their good fortune, attributing their success to wise leadership rather than supernatural guardianship. They did not know that their prince grew weaker with each act of protection, that his love for them was slowly consuming the very essence of his being. The king closed the scrolls with tears in his eyes, understanding at last the full scope of his son's sacrifice and the terrible choice that lay ahead. In the cursed lands, what remained of Prince Olufemi existed as consciousness without form, awareness without substance. He protected his kingdom through acts of woe that required no physical body, turning storms away from the harvest, guiding lost travelers to safety, inspiring healers with knowledge they needed to save lives. But with each passing season, he felt himself becoming more like the wind, present everywhere but belonging nowhere. The memories that had once sustained him grew dim like old paintings left too long in sunlight. He remembered loving someone, but could not quite recall faces. He remembered a place called home, but the details had become vague impressions rather than vivid scenes. Only his purpose remained clear: protect the kingdom, guard the people, maintain the watch that kept darkness at bay. The baobab tree, his oldest companion in exile, sensed his growing emptiness. "Young guardian," it said with ancient sadness, "you are fading faster than most. Your love burns too brightly, consumes too much of your essence with each act of protection. How long do I have?" Olufemi asked, his voice now nothing more than wind through silver grass. "Perhaps 10 more seasons, perhaps 5. The choice is yours: burn brightly and fade quickly, or hold some power in reserve and protect them more gradually over centuries." "No," came the immediate response. "They need full protection now, while they grow strong enough to protect themselves. Let me burn brightly rather than watch them suffer while I preserve myself." The tree sighed, a sound like wind through dying leaves. "Then you truly are the greatest of the guardian princes. But your kingdom must learn what you have sacrificed, or your gift will be forgotten with your name." High above, storm clouds gathered at the guardian's call, bringing the rain that would ensure another successful harvest in the kingdom he loved more than his own existence. Strange dreams began to visit the people of Obadime, visions of silver grass and protective mist, of a figure who watched over them from beyond the River Nkumbe. At first, individuals dismissed these dreams as imagination, but when entire villages reported similar visions, the kingdom began to pay attention. In the marketplace, old Mama Kudi told anyone who would listen about the dream prince who had warned her to move her sick grandson away from the river just before floods came. Farmer Adebowell spoke of mysterious rain that fell only on his withered crops, saving his family from starvation. Children played games where one pretended to be the guardian prince, standing watch while others slept safely. Their innocent games held more truth than the adults realized. Queen Mother Adoni walked among her people, listening to their stories with a heart that broke and healed simultaneously. Her son was becoming legend even while he still lived, his sacrifice transforming into the kinds of tales that would be told for generations. In the great hall, she addressed the assembled chiefs and elders. "The time has come to speak the truth about Prince Olufemi's fate. Our people deserve to know the price that has been paid for their protection." Chief Nyasha shifted uncomfortably. "My queen, such talk of magic and spirits might cause panic. The people are content with their prosperity. Contentment built on ignorance is not worthy of my son's sacrifice," she replied firmly. "They must understand what they have received and what it has cost, or they will never be strong enough to stand without his protection." King Adito Kombo entered the hall, carrying a golden box that held the most sacred artifacts of the kingdom. Tonight, we tell them everything. Tomorrow, we begin preparing them for the day when they must protect themselves. Under the full moon, the entire kingdom gathered in the great courtyard before the palace. King Adetokonbo stood before his people, no longer hiding the truth that had shaped their lives for years without their knowledge. My people, he began, his voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd, you have prospered under protection you did not recognize, guided by love you could not see. Tonight, you will learn the truth about Prince Olufemi and the choice he made to save us all. He told them everything, the prophecy, the exile, the transformation, the endless acts of protection that had shielded them from war, plague, drought, and disaster. He spoke of a prince who had traded his crown for the burden of eternal guardianship. The crowd listened in stunned silence as the king revealed how their missing prince had become their invisible defender, growing weaker with each act of protection while never asking for gratitude or recognition. But he is fading, Queen Mother Adoni added, her voice thick with emotion. His love for us is consuming him like fire consuming wood. Soon, we must learn to stand strong on our own, or his sacrifice will have been for nothing. From the crowd came voices of awe, gratitude, and heartbreak. Many wept to learn what their prince had endured in lonely exile. Others felt ashamed that they had called him a coward when he was actually the greatest hero their kingdom had ever known. Young Princess Folek stepped forward. Can we not call him back? Can we not release him from this burden? King Adetokonbo shook his head sadly. The transformation cannot be undone. But we can honor his sacrifice by becoming the people he believed we could be. Strong enough to protect ourselves and wise enough to remember what love can accomplish. That night, the entire kingdom knelt in the courtyard, offering prayers of gratitude to their guardian prince across the River Nkumbe. In the cursed lands, Prince Olufemi felt his people's prayers like warm sunlight on his fading spirit. For the first time in years, he remembered clearly why he had chosen this path, not duty or obligation, but love so pure it transformed sacrifice into joy. The baobab tree glowed with soft light as his consciousness gathered around it one final time. They know, he whispered to his ancient companion. They understand at last. And now, the tree asked gently. Now I can complete the transformation. Now I can give them my final gift. With the last of his strength, Olufemi reached deep into the spiritual realm and poured forth a blessing that would outlast his own existence. He wove protection into the very fabric of the land, imprinted love into the stones and rivers, embedded wisdom in the wind itself. When his work was finished, the kingdom of Obadime would remain blessed long after its guardian prince had faded into memory. The land itself would remember his sacrifice, offering subtle protection to those who honored the ancient ways and lived with courage and compassion. It is finished, he sighed, feeling his consciousness begin to scatter like seeds on the wind. They are safe. They are strong. They will remember. As dawn broke over the cursed lands, silver grass began to grow along the banks of the River Nkumbe, reaching toward the kingdom the prince had died to protect. Each blade whispered his name, ensuring that his story would never be completely forgotten. In the palace of Obadime, King Adetokonbo felt a great weight lift from his shoulders, though his heart remained heavy with loss. His son's watch had ended, but his love would echo through generations, inspiring future princes to choose sacrifice over comfort, duty over desire. The kingdom would survive and prosper, forever changed by a prince who chose exile over the crown and found immortality in love that asks nothing in return.